it's an owner-controlled site. There would be no need for it anyway.
And even under a redevelopment designation, obviously the ability to use a pilot or a RAB financing, it's entirely up to you.
Right.
If you don't want to grant that ability to the property owner, they can't have it.
Yeah,
it's under your purview.
that's absolutely correct. So, I mean, just because the site may be designated as in need of redevelopment doesn't necessarily mean that, the governing body would grant a pilot for it.
Yeah, you're not
That's
bound.
a separate, right, that's a separate legislative action of council. I have one additional question for Ms. Favate. As a planner, do you view the existing zoning as an impediment for the repurposing of the property?
I do, because there's not a lot you can do with it. It's essentially office and a hotel, but I'm not sure that a hotel would be very competitive here. I'd have to go back and look at whether you could meet all the conditions for a hotel. It is a conditional use. The site access is a problem, I think, for any kind of significant or more significant office development. They did say, the property owner, that their primary tenant profile is sort of the smaller scale corporate office and medical in particular. So they are seeing some of those smaller tenants, and they've had some success over the years, but again, there's a fair amount of turnover in those smaller tenants. And I think you have a fair amount of ROL zoning elsewhere in Parsippany that is probably in better shape, particularly on the western part of town around the Route 10 area. A lot of that is ROL and is doing okay. It's probably more competitive than this property.
Yeah. The only other thing that I was interested in was in any environmental impact there that I read there. It's a small DEP regulated wetland area is located in the southern property line. A retaining pond along the eastern property.
Yeah, there's not a lot in the way of significant environmental assets. There are those two small wetland areas. There's a very small wet area that's almost in the interchange itself. It's probably not a high quality wetland. There is that retention pond. The applicant, the owner has shared some concept plans in which they would keep that pond and actually make it more of an amenity for the site. If you go there, you can't really see the retention basin. It's kind of overgrown with vegetation. In terms of slopes, it's a fairly flat site. It's just down from the road, so you can't really see into the site. But once you come down that initial, it's almost like a bowl. Once you come down the initial access road, the site itself is very flat.
Yeah, and I assume that any redevelopment would include some better drainage and some better environmental.
Yeah, they're certainly not probably up to the standards that you have in your current stormwater regulations, much less the ones that are coming, down from the state.
Thank you.
I have two questions. You mentioned the overlay zone, that at the present time we don't know where that's going to be placed. Do you have any? Did they present anything to the planning board as to where that will be going, possibly?
That is part of the housing plan, and I should give you a copy. It was adopted last night, so it is being put over the entire site, but it provides for a certain number of units that basically encompasses the first phase of the applicant's desired concept.
Yes, I believe you had a map in the beginning of your presentation which showed us some of the areas.
Yeah.
Also, okay, I'm sorry, continue.
And to answer the second part of your question, they didn't talk about their development concept with the planning board because, again, the planning board's decision really was very narrow and not on any specific future development. It was just, does the site meet the criteria for designation?
The next question, I'm sure will have the same answer. We only have one ingress and one egress. It's just, this is a large complex.
Yes.
Are there other possibilities where they may possibly put an exit?
Yes, I will say that some of the concepts that I've seen as part of our discussions back and forth as part of the housing plan did show creation of a second means of egress and ingress. So two
I
entrances.
cannot imagine where that would be. You have
I think in the
I
back.
think it was
Where in
sort
the
of up
back?
here.
Where's it going to go?
287 maybe.
closer.
Yeah,
on Parsippany
obviously
Road.
all subject to traffic studies and further analysis.
Right, you've got 287 is in the back, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And then we have private roads with with private homes.
Right, you're not gonna get any access from here.
No,
Yeah,
none
surrounded on two
whatsoever.
sides by highways. Parsippany Road is the only
It's
access.
the only way.
Right, and, you know, it's a site plan detail, obviously, but, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think the access to a large extent is controlled by the existing signalized intersection.
Right, right. So, certainly a good point, and would be a critical point, both in a redevelopment plan as well
Right.
as any future site planning by the
See if
planning
it's
board.
possible, right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan, just for purpose of the affordable housing plan, a portion of the site was identified as overlaid in order to meet unmet need?
You know, I should know that since it was like 24 hours ago.
Right.
I actually think it's the entire site, but it's a limit on the number of units.
On a number of units?
Yeah,
Okay, and that
so-
was to address unmet need, it's not an RDP site, right?
Exactly.
That's right, unmet need.
Unmet need.
Yeah, it's an overlay zone, so it doesn't replace the zoning on the site. It just gives some different options if the owner is interested in that type of
That's on
development.
the third, isn't it? The third,
Hmm?
the third version of the housing plan or something?
Well, we're
Third
completing
round.
round 3 now.
Oh,
Yeah.
round-
Right.
yeah,
So
then
this would be round 4,
Four
which
or
is
five.
2025.
Yeah. So, a little bit longer term.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on.
So we should throw that open for council discussion, Mr. President.
Okay.
Now I
Any-
gotta get my-
Any questions from council?
When do we plan to vote on this?
Well, I think that's up to you tonight. You know, typically, when a presentation is made, there's usually a direction given to the township attorney as to whether or not a resolution should be prepared for the next meeting.
Oh, I think a resolution should be prepared.
Yes, they should.
So is the council at this point directing the township attorney to prepare a resolution pertaining to Land X Plaza?
I recommend that we do.
Okay. And everybody's in agreement on that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I think we should note that Ms. Peterson, I think, is
Yes, Ms.
recused
Peterson,
on
oh, I
this.
apologize. Definitely need to note that Ms. Peterson is recused from this matter and has been throughout the entire process.
So
Just so everybody's wondering, a residence is 200 feet away.
Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
That's for sure.
Don't-
So
she's a-
if it's council's direction, I'll go ahead and prepare a resolution for the next meeting.
Please.
Fantastic.
Thank you. All right, since our business administrator's not here, we'll move on to township clerk, Mr. Madden.
No report at this time, Council President. Thank you.
Okay, any township offices, committees, reports, anything?
Not at this time.
Okay. Bids taken, July 18th, Laboratory Improvement Project, July 24th, lease of public property, July 24th, one new 2019 Doosan portable power air compressor with running gear and accessories, July 31st, Powder Mill Pump Station upgrades, August 7th, rental of heavy equipment, August 15th, Smithfield Park Phase 2 improvements, to be taken, quotations, proposals, qualifications, none. This time I'll entertain a motion to open up the public hearing.
Motion.
Oh, second.
I have a motion made by Ms. Grignani, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call. Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Floor is open to the public on any matter.
Okay, if you do come up, please state your name and address. You'll be given 5 minutes.
Julia Peterson, 25 Old Parsippany Road. Yeah, and I'm going to try to be very appropriate. The fact is that when I see a presentation like that neglects to mention that in that little triangle where there are no residences or anything is a house that's 250 years old that has been maintained by my family for the last 150. And although I don't really expect any special consideration for it, it is one of the oldest houses in Parsippany. It is a national landmark, and our property was given by my mom. Our property remains in perpetuity not developed. So that's interesting only that if it's not developed, I mean, if you talk about something that has obsolescence, a 250-year-old house has real obsolescence. And it doesn't, we aren't asking you to make it an area of redevelopment, I don't think. Although, right across Route 80 from us is proposed a 40-foot high, 48-foot wide sign that we don't even get noticed about because we're 2 feet out of the line. So I've been coming to these hearings since like 1990, and I don't expect the town to do anything for me. I do wonder what it's going to be like to live across from an area with one exit that is going to be redeveloped. You know, I know those buildings. I remember when my parents sold the land that they are on, and they thought, oh, this is great. It's a planned office development. It'll always be beautiful, and we'll be able to preserve our house. And it turns out that in a town where growth is important, that's just not a consideration. It can't be a consideration. I acknowledge that that's not a consideration. I do wish sometimes that it wasn't up to me to sit up nights chewing my fingernails thinking, oh, okay, I guess there's nothing we can do other than what we've done, which is make the property that this house is on not available for development. But I don't know what else we could possibly do. And I don't, when you are considering the plans to develop this, please be mindful of maybe height restrictions, or maybe, I mean, I don't know how. Parsippany Road is a nightmare. And we just don't go out at certain times. But I know people who work on Parsippany Road who say, oh, it took me an extra 15 minutes. Every time 287 is blocked, every time 80 is blocked, people get off at Town Hall and come down Parsippany Road. So the people who are parking their cars in that parking garage are not going to be able to get out. And I will be at hearings, although it's surprising because there isn't any notice required. I mean, we weren't noticed that there was a 22nd for the planning board hearing. We didn't receive a notice. And we aren't receiving a notice about the 40-foot high sign on Route 80 right across from us because we're 5 feet out from, we're just right across from Route 80. And we're the only residents that's affected. So anyhow, thank you for listening, and thank you for your
Ms.
consideration.
Peterson, can you please state for the record what the historical significance of your home is?
Okay, well, it was the residence of the first elected governor of New Jersey during the Revolutionary War. He leased it. He didn't own it. And it was built in 1752, the first part of it. The second part of it is from 1765. There are 2 other houses in Parsippany I know that are the same age or older, but and we just kind of go along doing what they do in Europe, which is you make little patches. You kind of like the Dutch boy in the dike, you know. You hold your thumb, and we love the house, and it's our residence. So I'm not asking the town to subsidize my residence there. I just ask developers, particularly, to respect the fact that old houses, if people are going to live in them, the surround has to be considered. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They're run by 2 different people, or 2 different ownership groups.
You can sign in after.
Thanks, Hi. My name is Len Sipkins. I live at 243 Intervale Road.
I can ask you to speak into the mic, Mr.
Sure.
Sippins. Thank you.
243 Intervale Road in Parsippany. And I guess my house is a spring chicken. My house was built in 1831. And it's glory. You have to love old houses, and I'm on over an acre of land. And in my front yard, talking about what happens with redevelopment, is the Whole Foods complex. In fact, the last time that I was here, I was a director on the Citizens for Health, Safety, and Welfare, and we were the nonprofit that fought against that, and I've actually come to terms with what's there now, and I just hope that they have figured out all the different drainage issues and all the water issues that they're going to have, because we told them when they were building it that they were going to have it, and they were like, got it covered. And just like I said, hopefully it does. So I'm not here on that. So I'm following up on a letter from June 17, 2019 that was sent to the mayor's office. I have been a member of the Whippany River Watershed Action Committee for over 10 years. I was first appointed by Mayor Luther, and at the time I remember he said, yeah, I got a great organization you should be a member of. And he told me what it was, and I looked at him and I said, "You got to be freaking kidding me." I've been, like I said, 10 years. I am no longer Parsippany's representative because they've stopped paying their dues, but I'm still involved. And in fact, next year I will be the chairman of this organization. And honestly, it is one of the finest volunteer organizations I have ever been involved with. It's called the Whippany River Watershed Action Committee. It's because we do stuff.
Was
In
Art
fact-
Vespignani in that group?
Yes, he was. Art passed. Art was my mentor. In fact, we just did a couple months ago, we did a cleanup in Veterans Park with St. Gregory's Episcopal Church, where we pulled out a whole bunch of stuff in Troy Brook. So we do a lot of things. Anyhow, so in 2011, the Whippany River Watershed Action Committee was awarded a grant for $185,000 from New PAC to install Filterra boxes at Parsippany-Troy's police station and municipal court. The boxes were designed to take the stormwater and filter the pollutants out. There were 2 locations. A maple tree was planted in each of the boxes, and for 2 years I brought up to certain people that the trees have died. So the trees need to be replaced, and the Filterra boxes need to be maintained. That was part of the terms of the grant. Again, 2011, I believe the previous administration had done some stuff, but they need to be continually taken care of. And when these boxes were first installed, it was the first installation of its kind in the state. It was a pretty cool thing. So what I'm just asking for is I had supplied some of the manuals that I dug up going through Filterra, and I just want to see the boxes maintained and new trees planted. I had even offered a couple of years ago to pay for the new trees from the Whippany River watershed. So again, I would be willing to have a conversation with that. Secondly, many years ago, there were 4 rain gardens installed at Town Hall, 2 in the front of the building and 2 at the back of the building. They were monies from the Rutgers Cooperative Extension of Morris County and the Whippany River watershed. Last year, the Whippany River watershed reached out to the mayor's office, and they were just in really bad shape. They were just full. There were more weeds than there were anything else. So the Whippany River watershed, in conjunction with the 2 local Boy Scouts, each did one of the cleanups. I don't know if you remember, saw it, but we brought in River Rock. We had like 30, 40 scouts, scout leaders, and we brought them back to life. The township actually, some of the leaders were in the wrong direction, so everything was put into place. And then the game plan was for the Whippany River watershed to come back in the fall and to plant some new native plants and to add a little bit of color. I had reached out to the mayor's office to do that, and I was informed that he felt that it was very important that the rain gardens were maintained and that the town would be doing that. If you go take a look now, there's more weeds than there are anything else. And you can't really weed whack weeds because you're just making more weeds. Unfortunately, you have to get down on your hands and knees and actually pull stuff
Pull them out by the roots.
I stopped by when they were weed whacking them. I said, "You really got it." Then they laughed at me.
1 minute.
So, and again, that's something that we're willing to do. The Boy Scout troops were willing to they need environmental conservation hours to do so. So, again, I'm willing to have a conversation on that. And if you take a look at them, whoever cut the grass, they ran right over the berms, and the berms are there to keep the water inside. So it kind of defeats the whole purpose of what they were doing. The last thing, I'm following up on a letter dated July 12th that was sent to the mayor's office, and they were informed that we're excited to inform you that due to the great work performed by the Whippany River watershed with respect to litter abatement and environmental programs, the New Jersey Clean Communities Council has reviewed and approved a request to allow annual Clean Communities grant funds to be used to pay for their annual membership dues. So Parsippany has not been a member for the last 2 years. I've reached out, and so now it's only $1,200 a year. And the things that we've done in Parsippany, as well as the other member towns, is extraordinary. We continue to do stuff even though they're not a member. So if somebody could just follow up on that, I don't see any reason why you guys shouldn't come back. So that's it. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the record, we are reconsidering it.
Good. I would love to see that on the 2020 budget.
And then I'd like to follow up with somebody regarding the Filterra
Who's the
box.
liaison? Well, Once, just a minute. Once we join again, and I hope we do, we need to designate a liaison? Or would you still?
Yes, I was.
Or will you still serve as a
I
liaison?
I would be honored to continue as your representative. I mean,
Unless
honestly,
you want
the
to-
amount of the time that this takes out of, it's just so fulfilling. When we did the cleanup, there were families out there, and we were pulling stuff out of Troy Brook that should never have been in Troy Brook.
Years ago, was Jasmine Lim involved with that?
Yes,
And
yes.
Ellen Sandman?
Yes, yeah. A number of the members of the environmental committee were also on board, but we're willing to do cleanups everywhere. We did a lot of rain garden, built rain gardens in Veterans Park. There's rain gardens all over town installed. If you ever want to visit the one on my property, it's spectacular. It's full of hummingbirds and bees and butterflies. It takes a tremendous amount of work, but there's something blooming every year. And then all of the rainwater that came off of my roof and off of my driveway all goes inside into the rain garden and percolates down into the surface. It's a wonderful thing. It's a lot of love, but
But these haven't been maintained here.
no,
Is it-
you really have to hand weed them, and then you have to thin and prune them out. I mean, go take a look at them. You'll
Yeah,
see
I
where
have. I
the
passed
mower
them.
today ran right over the berm.
Yeah. Is it the Boy Scouts? Have you contacted the Boy Scouts to possibly redevelop that again, or
We do, but we would need
the approval of the township?
town to say, the Boy Scouts were actually disappointed when they were told that they could no longer do that because they need that for environmental hours. As part of their advancement, they
Sure.
need X amount of hours and number of different things.
Right.
And like I said, there's 2 local Boy Scout troops, and they would both maybe even be willing to adopt them. We did a rain garden installation at the Hanover Municipal Building last year. It was just completed last year. And the local Boy Scout troop, they did a resolution that they're gonna take care of it. So a number of times throughout the year, they go out there, they prune, they spruce, they weed stuff down. They're solely responsible for that. And again, that's an indefinite.
What are the numbers of the troops that participated the last time in this
72 and 173. My son's a member of one. In fact, he's getting ready to go for his Eagle Scout, and I know that they would be very interested to
Why wouldn't
continue
we?
that on.
Why wouldn't we do that?
Do
There are
you have a
other
card?
places in town besides Town Hall that need this more than Town Hall. That's part of the discussion we're gonna have.
Right, and we're willing to help however like I said, we're a nonprofit. You know, we're looking for ways to just make everything, you know,
We
the
should
water's
take
gotta go somewhere.
Take advantage of this.
This is,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
people come into town hall, and if they see what we have that is not really what it's supposed to be,
Yeah, I'd love to take down the sign that says whipping your hair. It's just unsightly. It just,
yeah.
the river rock, I mean, we put some, it's a
Yeah,
process
I
that needs to
remember
be
when the
done.
Boy Scouts did it. I happened to come by one afternoon
Yeah,
when
there's
they were
photos,
working on
if
it.
you go on our website, there were photos, I believe Paul and the mayor were there when,
Yeah.
were there, so
Well,
it's,
we've got to get this back into the better shape.
and I have a
rather
rain
than what it
garden
looks
expert,
like.
and in fact, we're getting ready to repair the rain garden at St. Gregory's Church. There's 2 different areas, they've been overgrown, so
Okay.
parishioners are gonna step
Okay.
up in conjunction with my rain
Let's get
garden
to it.
expert, myself. We supply the funds.
Get his card. You have a card?
Okay.
Do I have a card?
Yeah, I was just
Can I
gonna
give you
say.
my real estate card?
Well,
I'll take that. No.
He does,
good.
he
Yeah,
does.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't have one for the watershed, but I do.
This is
So last
something-
thing I'm gonna close on, so yeah, there's a lot of outdated commercial buildings in Parsippany that if they do get updated, the millennial market is there, and there's a lot of industries that wanna be in Parsippany because it is such a great place to live. And I can tell you that the residential market in Parsippany is so strong, and I don't see it really going down. It's a great place to live, and it's a very diverse place with great schools, with
I've got
neighborhoods, with
10
parks.
children who are millennials, and the thinking process of them is different from when I worked for corporations. They don't they want to do some work at home. They're all mobile now, and they want to spend some time in the office, but they want shared services, a shared conference room, a shared library, shared secretaries, shared other services, and not spend all week in the office. So a lot of millennials would, if there were buildings like that provided shared services, it could look like they're a big corporation, when they have somebody come into the conference room, but they're only one office maybe and 5 people. But the millennials want that kind of service, and apparently we can't adapt these buildings to provide.
It's hard, yeah, it's hard. So there's definitely a niche there, you just gotta figure out how to do it, and spending, with the best spending of money, so. Again, thank you for your time.
Okay. I would like to have a resolution for our attorney to make, to present to us at our next meeting, that this rain garden that we have, especially on the town property, this is an entrance to our building, and I think it should be maintained. And if we can have the cooperation of the 2 Boy Scout troops, number 172 and 73, I would like that to be done.
So that's a resolution to reconstruct the rain gardens at the municipal
And
building?
maintain it.
Maintain them, yeah.
The only problem,
Yeah, but you cut the staff in the Parks and Forestry Department, so.
We're talking about the Boy Scouts.
These guys will do it for
Talking about the Boy
free.
Scouts.
Okay.
We're not talking about Parks and Forestry, sir.
Okay.
These guys will do it for free.
They do it around.
Is that
They
my-
don't do it for free, they do it for $1,200 a year. Which is a bargain.
I think it's well worth $1,200 to make our entrance pleasant to look at.
Okay, good.
Okay?
1,200, I'm gonna hold it to that.
Well, that's what the gentleman, I believe, is asking.
That's right.
Okay.
With the 2020 budget.
Yeah, for the dues, I would need to have,
Just need you to come up and
I would need to, sit down with Parks and Forestry, it would need to be a joint effort. Boys,
Well, why is it
we would all
Parks?
need to work together, as we did before when we repaired it. You guys supplied some of the compost, some of the materials, they took away the debris, so it's
We have
it's a-
Parks and Forestry
it-
staff
it's a-
helping with that.
It's a joint
Okay?
effort, right?
Wasn't free. Wasn't free. There was labor involved.
If we have, I'm sorry, Mayor, we have compost on our properties, on the township properties. I don't think it would be a problem to get a couple of garbage bags, fill up the garbage bags with the compost material, and bring it to the site. I think we're making more of this than what it is, sir.
Yes, you are.
I am?
Yes, you are.
Okay, then I'm making more of it than what it is. If you can get in touch with the Boy Scouts, we will have a resolution made, and hopefully this can go forward. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have the money.
But you can spend it other places.
Budget's done.
So I'm one of those millennials, and I'll be speaking about water as well.
Sir, could you state your name and address?
My name's Tom Domino. I'm at 535 Lakeshore Drive. I want to thank you guys for everything you're doing. Spending my 31st birthday here tonight as well.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
But an important topic that's been top of mind as of late. I joined this great community about 6 years ago. I live on Lakeshore Drive in Lake Parsippany, and really started a young family, the American dream. And we got a really concerning letter from the Lake Parsippany Homeowners Association about 30 days ago. And it's a volunteer community with about 2,200 homes that contribute certain amounts to make that lake whole. Entirely volunteer. For a family membership to use the community access, it's about $400 and change. There's recent legislation at the state level that passed that is going to negatively impact that community, likely in a major way. And unfortunately, there's major negative consequences to the entire community in Lake Parsippany and Parsippany in whole. So the property association has been semi-insolvent for several years now. The amount of money it takes to maintain the dam, the lake, and the community, the volunteer membership continues to decline. It's very interesting. Of 2,200 homes, we have less than 10% that actually volunteer and contribute to that entire structure. So we received a notice from the president of the association that unfortunately, unless something happens within the very near future, Lake Parsippany could potentially be put up for sale with the dam removed and the lake drained. Obviously, based on terrible, things in other communities throughout, the country, major negative impact on property values, and as a young person, their entire hopes and dreams for the American dream. So I'm here today to ask this council and the mayor to constructively have a conversation as a resident, not as a representative of the Lake Parsippany Homeowners Association, to seek active solutions to preserve that 135 acres of open space, of beautiful parkland that is private but accessed and utilized by many, many, many people that actually don't contribute in addition to what their tax base is. I think it's an issue that's top of mind to those 2,200 homes and anyone that visits that community on a regular basis. I am lakefront. Since I've been there, I've been contributing. I can't imagine what it would be like to wake up every morning and see 135 acres of swamp, or that in-between period into whatever it turns into. It's, from a monetary standpoint, a very small amount that it would work out to, but they are looking for different alternatives. Unfortunately, I don't know how that's going to shake out, and I know time is of the essence, and this is a critical issue to a lot of the residents in that community. The lake also serves, based on an agreement with the town, as a water retention basin for about 1,000 acres of property that drain into that facility. Also, Interstate 80 is involved in that underground system, and the question is, how would the town handle that, and what kind of investment they would have to make on top of everything else? So
we have an obligation to.
Wait.
So hold on, Mike, let him finish. So you have 1 minute left.
So, my main reason for being here is to work within this community, to actively work with the homeowners association to come up with solutions so the overall community remains such a great one. And I would hate to see anything negatively impact the town and the community and the property values, and negatively impact the rest of the tax base of Parsippany as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a
Mr.
question
Council
for-
President?
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead, Jim.
Is there still litigation pending between the association and various homeowners? Because I was aware of the fact that there was litigation, and
Yes.
I recently asked to see a copy of the bill the governor signed, and I spoke to the administrator actually yesterday before he left about this. But
It's unfortunate, these homeowners associations, whatever side you sit on, it's understandable. Whether people should have to pay or shouldn't have to pay is semi-irrelevant. The whole overall larger community would be obviously negatively impacted if you have a swamp there and the dams are removed and that beautiful open space is compromised. So it looks like time is of the essence. Based on the budgets that they're sharing, this could, prior to that legislation or that litigation, unfortunately being resolved, there could be negative impacts.
When was the bill rescinding the 2017 bill signed, Jim?
recently, Mayor, I want to say like within
this-
maybe the last month or
It
so.
was
maybe
No.
6
It's,
weeks.
last I heard it was still sitting on his desk. He hasn't signed it yet.
It was
Oh,
a unanimous
okay.
vote. It was
He-
a unanimous vote.
All right,
Okay.
I understood that he had signed the bill, but I can check that tomorrow.
Okay. So, if I may, Mr.
Right.
Council
It did-
President.
It did pass both houses, so if he
Unanimously.
hasn't signed
Oh,
it,
yeah.
it's on his desk, Mayor.
This is a very complex issue.
It is,
that,
for sure.
We've been monitoring as a township. Okay. The first is, to keep in mind there was a bill in 2017 that was written to give homeowners associations, usually applying to condominium associations, the right to put liens on people's houses and to ask for a collection of, fees that were not paid, assessments to take care of the property. This was probably a bit of an overreach to adapt this to the lake associations. That's not a legal opinion. That's my personal opinion. That's not the opinion of the township. I think that's, it was probably an overreach. However, here's the binary choice I feel we have right now. If the governor signs this bill that changes, that gets rid of the 2017 bill, our options are this. We can't leave it just like that. It looks like some sort of litigation needs to, some sort of legislation needs to be written separate for condo associations so they can still do what they have to do, but something else needs to be created for lake associations so that they can continue to collect fees, but not in the draconian way, that's my own term, draconian way that they were collecting it. I questioned the idea of collecting the same rate for someone who's right on the lake as someone who's a mile away. I have a problem with that. That really bothers me. But something should be collected, I think. But that something needs to be designed for that, to replace the 2017 law, but something that's a bit more reasonable so that Lake Parsippany can still thrive and go on, but without putting a financial burden on people who are not benefiting the most. The big problem that a lot of people seem to have is that even if you pay the assessment, you still cannot use the property because then you have to pay an additional membership fee. I have no opinion on that because I don't live in that area, but I think the Lake Parsippany Property Owners Association should rethink that on how that is done, or at least how the fees can be done. There are changes in culture and structure going on right now that they may need to adhere to, and just maybe diversifying the board. I'm not sure what the correct answer is, but certainly doing business as usual is not the right answer. Now, if the governor decides to not sign the bill, leaving the 2017 bill still in effect, what needs to happen is legislation going forward that could make amendments and changes to that 2017 bill so it's not so draconian, so people aren't putting liens, associations aren't putting liens on people's houses, especially, you're affecting people that may be on a fixed income, okay, that can't afford that kind of money, that it could really put them out. But in the same respect, as we've said and we know, to not take care of this lake could be a serious environmental hazard. We've all been reading the papers lately. And as you aptly described, Route 80 does drain into this. That's why you have so much salt content in the water too, but from the snow removal, but that's another story altogether. So this is a very complex issue. I have met and talked to both sides on this. They both have very relevant points. What I'm basically waiting for is to see what the outcome is going to happen, whether it's signed or it's not signed, because we're going to have to act. But again, I want to make sure we keep in mind the people that live in the lake area, but they live in the lake area, but they live all on Halsey Road over by the library, and I'm not sure they should be paying the same rate that this nice gentleman is paying, who's right on the lake.
I was one of the 7 at that meeting as a young millennial that already pays property taxes here. That thought that was absurd. That voted against that.
See,
because I understood
that's
that
good.
concept.
Right.
With that said, here we are, snapshot to 3 or 4 years later. It is now becoming a township issue as well.
So something smarter needs to be introduced, whether each way.
I'm here as a representative for myself, as a private resident, not a representative in any way of the Lake Parsippany Property Owners Association.
Can I just ask a question? Aren't there, is this an HOA as with a townhouse association or a condominium? It's different, isn't it?
It's a little more complicated than this.
Yeah.
It's very
Because a lot of the
Yes.
obligations arise from things that were put in deeds many years ago.
Okay.
I have spent hours
So it's not
studying
like
this issue.
joining a homeowners association
Exactly.
and signing, I commit to this and this and this.
Correct.
Okay.
It's also an open community that
Okay.
is
That's right.
very different than,
It doesn't fall
I
in
can
that.
tell you, there's 200 residents in the community that are members. I live lakefront, and there's 2,000 that walk around my property a day.
Yeah.
So, and should they pay anything, that's beyond for someone smarter
Right.
than I.
So there's no bylaws or anybody commits to these when they
There is
okay,
not,
it's just
unfortunately.
a-
So it's entire
okay.
volunteer. We pay. We're maintaining that property for the larger community at large.
Right.
I do feel there is some responsibility to some extent for this town and this council to help make sure that remains solvent, so our community overall, remains.
Yeah,
as great as it's
I
been.
agree with you. We have two other lake communities. You're not the
yes.
only
You have
Yeah,
this in other
there's
areas,
similar
right?
issues.
Yes,
We
it's
have
happening all
Rainbow
over the
Lakes
state
and we have
from what they
Yeah.
say.
Intervale Lake
Intervale,
with the exact same issue. And God help us if all these associations go bankrupt, either the township would have to assume that responsibility at some humongous cost and a huge tax increase for everybody, people that don't belong in the lakes.
Yeah. And then the
Or-
lake would then be public property,
Or
and
we
anyone
need,
can go there.
Or we need legislation to help you. In fact, Jim, I was going to ask you, if the governor does sign this, is there anybody looking at legislation to protect the lake associations? Can we reach out to the New Jersey League of Municipalities and see? This is not a new issue.
Yeah, I know, it's not a new issue. It's an issue that is, throughout New Jersey, because there are other lake communities, both like in Sussex, Burlington County.
All
for
over the
example.
state.
All over the state. I don't know if the league has a position, and I don't know if there are other bills pending, but I can check on all of that.
Councilman DePiero, the expense for the operating budget for 2018, I believe, was around $200,000 in total. Not, and that includes everything, all in. The gap seems to be around $75,000. The membership today is about $435 for a family membership. The easement, whatever that was, that went out, that's in legislation, was $110 for a family for 2,200 homes, representing about $220,000. The historical negative impact on property assessments after lakes have been, removed, has been multiples higher than that.
Yep.
And with 2,200 homes with 7,500 average assessment, you're looking at $16-17 million.
Sir, can you give your name
Yep.
and phone number to the clerk, so this
Sure.
way, once we find out a status
Have you-
on
have
the
you-
bill and everything,
Sure.
he
You can
can
reach
If you could
out
just
to me.
sign in,
appreciate it.
if you sign in, leave your name, phone number as well, and address, and we'll reach out to you.
Yeah, the other part of your question was the detention basins, that the township
Come on, Mayor.
pours the water from storm drains into the detention basins. It is the township responsibility to keep those detention basins clean.
Is that enough for this gentleman?
Thank you, guys.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
All right.
Birthday. You already left your name
Yes.
over there?
Mary Przicki, who also knows all about this incident.
Mary,
and
are you going to come here on your birthday as well?
No, I'm
No.
so old.
Okay.
I don't even celebrate my birthdays. Shucks. Dirt is younger than me in some spots. Well, don't count that time. All right.
Mayor's interrupting you.
All right. Well, anyhow, it is more complicated than what this gentleman had to say, okay? There were S8 agreements back in the 80s that if you read them, and I believe we did present some to the mayor's office, because we did meet with him, because you have to understand that I am a member of Lake Parsippany, okay? And when we bought our home, there was no obligation to the lake. There was no documentation, no bylaws, no rules and regulations, or anything presented at closing to say that you were a homeowners association for 86 years. If I was on the board, Kenneth was president, and I don't care any other officer you can bring up here, when a realtor asked if you had to pay a membership to the LPPOA, the answer was no. So you bought your house knowing that, yes, you can become a member if you so choose, okay? One little clause in an old deed was taken up by an attorney, and it was a theory presented that everyone would have to pay assessment fees. It's being challenged, yes, in a court of law, in a class action suit. The legislature came along, and to get back to the S8 agreements, if you read them very carefully, they were signed that the town would incorporate Lake Parsippany as a retention basin for that whole drainage area, okay? With that, They have now, if you read the clause, they own the dams, the dikes, the spillways, and the retention basins. They maintain and they pay through tax dollars the repairs, and whatever's required by state regulations are paid not by the association like they claim, but by the township of Parsippany. The benefit to the lake is both to the township as a retention basin for that whole entire drainage area, which is close to 1,000 acres, but it also acts as a retention basin for downstream flooding. Because if you did not have that lake, you would have flooding definitely onto Jacksonville Drive, down Westminster, Eastman Brook, all of that would flood, East Halsey Road, okay? The benefit is to both parties, both to the town and the lake, because without the drainage water, there would be no Lake Parsippany. Because in the 80s, when all of this was being developed, we would say, oh, pipe that storm drain around. We don't want that water in our lake. Well, guess what? Found out that if you didn't have the storm drain water, you didn't have a lake. And then if you didn't have that area, the town didn't have the benefit of that retention basin to stop the necessary need for everything, okay? So it's a dual benefit. But still in all, people are moving in with the assumption that they did not have to join, because there was nothing, absolutely nothing done at closings to say that you did have to join, and always reiterated by the officers of the association to this day, except when all this happened in 2017. Yes.
1 minute, Mayor.
1 minute. He got more than 1 minute. And so did a lot of
We're
other
having
people.
conversations with them,
Okay,
that's why.
all right. So then, to be real quick, when the state legislature did the Planned Unit Fair Development Act, okay, it was meant for condominiums and for homeowners associations, not volunteer associations. Volunteer means you had the choice to join, okay? In 2017, the word volunteer came out of that legislation. They realized it from day one and knew they had to fix it. And that's why you got S3661A 5043 passed by by the Senate unanimously, by the Assembly 72 to 2 no, 1 abstention. Okay? It sits on the governor's desk, yes, to be signed, to give equitable justice to the people who do have liens put on their houses. You're supposed to be a community? No, Lake Parsippany was absorbed
time's up.
by this municipality. Every responsibility that they had in their deeds are now your responsibility already. We're
Time's
not
up, time's
asking,
up, Mayor.
okay, wait,
Time's
just let me end one thing, okay? Get
Yeah,
the
finish
cop
your
in here and
sentence.
take me out. But listen, the fact of the matter is that most of us, myself included, do not want to see the lake disappear. But solutions, reasonable solutions, should be looked at and discussed. I mean, call the both parties in, but don't say you have to pay, because look at the economic status of the people who live in Lake Parsippany and ask yourself, can every one of them afford those assessments? And the answer will be no. And to me, people's needs come before things.
Thank you.
Nicholas Homiak from No Lake, Hiawatha. I'd like to have a resolution to rename the town No Lake, because there is no lake there. I remember when I was a kid, you wouldn't even want to swim in it then. What was I going to say here?
Excuse me, Mr. Homiak.
Volunteers, even George Washington knew you couldn't depend on volunteers. You need workers. So was it for that $4 and something if you lived in a $500,000 home? We didn't want to keep up with the municipal workforce. And This Lanadex Plaza, I'm confused by one term I'd like to have explained. I saw it up there, it said overcrowding. But Parsippany is the victim of our way of life, which is a market-driven economy that sees land as a commodity and not a resource. And then you don't take into mind cumulative effects, cost avoidance. You have an office space over here, I'm making another one over there. What do you think was going to happen? So something's going to have to be done about this the lake situation. Now that Parsippany is in the Highlands, I think that there's some serious consulting should be done with the Highlands Coalition, because they do have elements in the management plan for lakes and lake communities. So maybe they can come up with some kind of reasonable solution to help everyone. And I didn't hear the Highlands mentioned on anything to do with the Lanadex Plaza or the lakes. The rain garden and the weed whacker, I hope that when I was here the last time about the municipal workers, before they cut the grass is always going to grow anyway. The police up the trash, don't ignore what we accept as a way of life. All this plastic pollution, don't cut it up with the machine, police it up, which also will take a little more time, maybe a little more manpower. North Beverwick has been, it looks pretty degraded lately. We need some kind of a manual street cleaner up there. If we can't get or don't have the municipal power that could make these people clean in front of their own premises and stores, because I would say Parsippany, North Beverwick, well, Washington's path is unsanitary most of the time, and it just shouldn't be that way. And the town departments need to get more reactive. They need to get out there and look around. They can't depend on people saying, oh, I saw this, or I'm reporting this. They have to go out there and start looking around on a regular basis. I think to be paid a salary just to hang around in the office, you got to get out there in the field. You don't stay in a garrison all the time. You got to go in the field and do some exercises. And the other thing that the resolution for, I'd like to have that explained. I know what a bond is, but why is RD Realty seeking a resolution to, I think, what is it, reduction of a performance guarantee? I think that I'd like to have that explained, and if the town planner could state what she meant by overcrowding. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll take the first half of the question, and then we can defer to Susan for her. But the statute identifies a number of conditions. You don't have to meet all of those conditions. Overcrowding is one of those conditions. Just to parse the language of the statute, the area or building or improvement by which, by reason of dilapidation, obsolescence, overcrowding, faulty arrangement or design, lack of ventilation, light and sanitary facilities. So I don't think that the planner's recommendation was based on overcrowding. It just parroted the statute. But I think what was determined was that the building is functionally obsolescent and also dilapidated in some of its physical condition. And Susan, if you want to amplify.
That's exactly correct. And I was essentially quoting the statute, which is why it was on the screen, but I didn't actually mention it because it's not really pertaining to this property. It's not overcrowded. We think it meets the criteria for other reasons, which we went through.
In fact, it's probably undercrowded, right? It's largely vacant, right?
So, thank you.
With respect to the bond release for RD, so pursuant to the land use law, the developer is obligated to post a performance bond for site improvements. So that's calculated by the engineer up to I think it's 120% of the value of the site improvements. As the construction on-site progresses, the developer is able to ask for a release if the work is satisfactorily done. The law says that at 70% completion, the remaining 30% of the bond has to be maintained until such time as the certificate of occupancy is issued. So the engineer had told me previously that there's about 73 or 74% of the required site construction has already been inspected and completed. So he's asked for a reduction for the remaining amount. The 30% will continue to be held until such time as the certificate's issued.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah, that's the normal progress of construction.
Oh, and just real quick, when she presented about Lanadex, she also, Susan also talked about permeable surfaces, and that there's an opportunity to get more permeable surfaces. So we've been keeping the Highlands and permeable surfaces in mind with just about everything we're doing moving forward.
Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Linda McKenna. My husband's name is Sean McKenna. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it tonight. He works nights. I live at 169 Rainbow Trail, and I have the same issue as Lake Parsippany, but mine's even worse. I have a lien on my house, along with 29 other people, so I'm speaking on behalf of them too. So I understand that the town cannot remove the lien. That's not why I'm here. I've been on the phone probably for the last year and a half with Trenton, with Assembly people, with DCA, with Governor Murphy's office. I have a binder this thick, title insurance companies. There's not a single piece of legal documentation that Rainbow Lakes Community Club had the right to place a lien on my property, along with the rest of my people. They threatened us for 1 year. 1 year we got newsletters. If you don't have your assessment in by this date, we will come after you like bullies and we will put a lien on your house. And they did. And the way they told us on social media, the day they did it, we got nothing in the mail. Miss Eleanor Douglas, the president of Rainbow Lakes, she put this on Facebook, and she said, I want everybody to know, look on the online records in Morris County, you have a lien on your house. So we all started calling each other like, what the heck? They put a lien on us, and now we're having a problem buying cars, putting kids in college. Somebody's trying to refinance. They had to put the whole thing in escrow. It's just created a total chaos. And again, we're waiting for 3661. Please, Governor Murphy, sign that law. Sign that bill into law. Because it's just out of control. So I'll just give you a little background of what's going on there. And again, I'm not here for anybody here to remove my lien because I know you can't. So what they did was they went down to Morris County Courthouse and they told the county clerk that we were an HOA/condo. My husband was there today. The woman told my husband they didn't have to present anything to us. They told us you were a condo HOA, so we put a lien on all your homes because you didn't pay your dues. Okay, so we have nothing to go with that. So this is a little background on Rainbow Lakes. And again, I was for months going back and forth with my title insurance company. They told me everything I have is correct, but they would not stand by me or support me because they said it's post activity to my closing. I'm there 32 years in the same house, single family dwelling. To my knowledge, I don't live in a condo. I hope they didn't change my house to a condo overnight without me knowing, like they did the lien. So I'm there for 32 years, and Rainbow Lakes was formed 95 years ago. And they decided to put these lawsuits on us, and let's see, where was I here? They did not file lawsuits with us, nor did they obtain any judgments against any of us required by the law. They just told the county clerk, as I just said, that they had the right to file liens automatically as if we were a condo association, which we're not, to my knowledge. So we all contacted title insurance companies, and not one of us got anywhere. And because we were all told the same thing, this is post-activity to your closing. So it looks like once you have a closing on your house, they don't support you anymore. So there's no documents anywhere. I've searched back to 1922. I took 3 days off of work last year, went down to Morris County, searched my deeds back to 1922. There's not a single map, not a single title that shows any kind of legal documentation that I have a lake easement to their lake. Nothing.
Ma'am, you have
Absolutely
You
nothing.
have 1 minute.
1 minute. My husband even went to a historian in East Hanover, found out there's nothing. So then we found out that they told the county courthouse that they used a bylaw. There's no bylaws recorded anywhere in public records in the courthouse. In 2017, they say they amended these bylaws to take advantage of Chapter 106, which is Prefeta, not recorded anywhere. Then they tried to apply Prefeta to all the residents in Rainbow Lakes. This law, Chapter 106, has nothing to do with lake fees and lake clubs. This law, if you read the law, which I've read about 80 times already, controls the management of condos and HOAs. It was for transparency and voting rights for all the people living in a condo within legal established created condo and HOA. It was to show transparency. It was never intended for a voluntary lake club, for somebody to walk in and slam a lien on your house. It's just like total disgusting. I have to admit, I've loved living here for 32 years. I can't wait to move because I've had it.
Ma'am, time's up.
Okay, that's it. So that's all I want to say. We're waiting for Governor Murphy to sign it. We're on the phone with him every day, telling him, please sign this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
How much is the lien for?
Assessment, whatever the assessment is, it's for the, how much the assessment